Chapter 01. On New Year's Eve. I was carrying my pregnant belly, preparing the New Year's Eve dinner together with the servants. The joyful laughter in the house came to an abrupt halt when Elias walked in with a pregnant woman. Ignoring the servants' bewildered looks, Elias told them all to go home for the holiday and come back after the new year. They were supposed to leave only after finishing the dinner. Now, everything stopped halfway. Once everyone left, Elias pulled out a divorce agreement. Sarah is pregnant. I can't let her child be some shameful illegitimate kid. We'll divorce first. Then after her child has a proper identity, we'll remarry. My whole body went cold as I stared at the words leave with nothing written on the agreement. Anyway, since we'll remarry later, we won't bother with dividing the assets. It's too much trouble. While Elias was explaining, the woman named Sarah curved her lips into a smug smile. That's right, sister. Transferring property and all that is too much hassle, since you two will remarry later. Just skip it. She might as well have said outright that leaving me with nothing was her idea, and Elias was simply following her lead. What a clumsy excuse. Property transfers are troublesome? Fine, but a bank transfer isn't. It only takes a second to send me the money in cash. How thoughtful of you. Without hesitation, I signed, took the divorce agreement, and walked out of the villa. Behind me, Sarah's voice floated over. She won't do anything drastic, right? No, she just hasn't come to her senses yet. She'll be back soon. Elias answered gently. I didn't actually leave after stepping outside. It wasn't that I didn't want to, it was that I was thinking about the future. Everything in the past had become nothing but bubbles. I sat in the courtyard, wondering whether I should keep this child. If I did, and he inherited his father's shameless genes, could I straighten him out? I didn't want to spend my youth being driven half mad by Elias, then grow old only to die of the same rage because of his bloodline. Just imagining my child one day saying shameless words to his pregnant wife, like Elias had to me, was enough to make me want to drop dead right then and there. I quickly came to a decision. Genes are hard to change. I wasn't about to challenge something so impossible. A light flicked on in a guest room on the second floor. Through the window, I could see two intertwined figures. Taking a deep breath, I went back into the villa. In the bedroom, I locked the door and gathered all my documents, bank cards, a few pieces of valuable jewelry I had bought myself, some clothes from before my pregnancy. I stuffed them into a small bag and tossed it out into the courtyard. By the time I finished packing, Elias still hadn't returned. I suddenly felt that locking the door was pointless. Putting the closet back in order, I opened the door, only to see Elias and Sarah walking out of the guest room. Sarah's eyes flashed with a mocking smile. Elias really does know you well. I was worried you'd actually run away from home. She was mocking me, as if to say, even with a mistress inside my house, I still endured it in silence. She has nothing. Where could she possibly go? You should rest. It's late. Elias pushed her gently and turned to scold me. Sarah usually sleeps at this hour. She only went out just now to look for you. Can't you be more considerate? I didn't answer. The two of them went back into the guest room and shut the door. I went downstairs, picked up my bag from the courtyard, and walked out of the villa. Since ride-hailing cars weren't allowed into the villa district, I had no choice but to walk. Fortunately, I took a walk every day, and the half hour to the community gate didn't tire me at all. Chapter 02. On New Year's Eve. The hospital wasn't crowded. The doctor in the emergency room looked at me, then frowned at my swollen belly. You really want to terminate it? I took out the divorce agreement. The date of the signatures was today. Today the mistress came into my home, and this child has no family anymore. He even has a stepmother who's already wishing him dead. My voice broke as I began to sob. And besides, I've left the marriage with nothing. Doctor, in this state, I can't possibly raise a child. Rather than letting him suffer with me, it's better to let him be reborn into a better family. The doctor's eyes widened slightly at the words leave with nothing. All right then, but your pregnancy is already quite advanced, so you'll need a surgical procedure. I'll arrange for you to be admitted first, take some medication, and then schedule the operation. I had already heard that terminating a pregnancy at this stage was almost as painful as giving birth, but if enduring this pain meant I wouldn't be tormented into an early death later on, then it was worth it. Chapter 03. After staying in the hospital for 7 days, I found a postpartum recovery center and stayed there for a month. I wasn't truly someone with nothing. I was a designer. I had once worked full-time, but after being with Elias, he decided that being a designer wasn't fitting for his wife. Better, he said, to be a full-time housewife. It sounded more respectable, so I had to quit. Quietly, I registered as a freelancer on international platforms and began taking on global design projects online. Over the years, I had built a steady client base, and they kept introducing me to new ones. Because of the exchange rates, I actually earned far more than before. But to avoid Elias sneering that my work was beneath his status, I always kept it hidden. So to this day, he had no idea I actually had a substantial income. He thought I was nothing more than a parasitic vine clinging to him. That was why he bullied me so recklessly. I wasn't noble. I was just too lazy to bother fighting him. Not long ago, through a client's introduction, the Coup Corporation had contacted my work account online. I had thought of quoting a low price or even working for free. In the past, I had naively imagined if Elias Coup discovered that the international designer they admired was me, would he allow me to return to the design industry? But now, none of that mattered anymore. After leaving the recovery center, I received a call from Elias telling me to meet him at the Civil Affairs Bureau. You've been hiding for so long. Don't tell me you're trying to avoid divorcing me at the bureau? His words stunned me, but I already knew what would come next. Sure enough, he said almost exactly what I expected. Unfortunately for you, you miscalculated. With a signed divorce agreement, I can get the divorce certificate without you. A moment later, my WeChat lit up with a photo of our divorce certificate and his marriage certificate with Sarah. Don't play little tricks with me. As long as you behave, I'll still treat you kindly. I didn't even feel like replying. A woman really must have her own career. If I had followed Elias's wishes and become a full-time housewife, today I would probably be so angry I'd jump into a river. Instead, I sent him an address where he could mail the divorce certificate. It was a place I had lived during college. I didn't live there anymore, but since deliveries rarely went to homes directly and were dropped at pickup stations, I could just collect it once the station sent me a notice. I had no intention of giving Elias another chance to disgust me. Sarah, meanwhile, had tried multiple times to add me on WeChat. It was laughable. Why would I ever add the mistress of my marriage? After her persistent requests, I simply blocked her. Then she switched to texting me insults. I never even opened them, blocked her immediately. I barely touched WeChat, leaving her to scream in frustration with no outlet. While at the recovery center, I had already applied for a new phone number. Once I received the divorce certificate, I planned to cancel the old one completely. No chance for them to pester me again. Since we were in the same city, the next day I received the station's notification. I picked up the divorce certificate immediately. Then I moved to another city, City C. There, I bought a small villa by the sea and began my life as an online designer. Looking back, I suppose Elias did serve some purpose. If not for being with him, I might never have registered online as a designer, and I wouldn't have become a globally recognized one today. For years, I had only dealt with clients online, and I had no intention of changing that. Within 2 days of moving in, I had transformed my courtyard into a comfortable workspace, and then, I got to work. Chapter 04. 2 days after Elias's assistant reported that Helen had signed for the divorce certificate, Elias inexplicably began to panic. By all logic, once Helen saw the certificate, she should have panicked too. She should have come running back to beg him for reconciliation. But now, there wasn't a single text. Not one phone call. It was as if she had completely vanished from his world. Helen had no income, and all she had taken with her were a few pieces of jewelry she had bought herself. Selling those might let her survive for at most 2 months. Nearly 2 months had passed, yet Helen hadn't looked for a job. In fact, Elias had already made arrangements. He had given word in the jewelry industry that if Helen sent in a resume, they should notify him immediately and reject her application. Since she hadn't sent out any resumes, it proved that in all these years she had lost the courage to re-enter the workforce. She hadn't even reached out to her old friends. She would come back to him soon. That was how Elias comforted himself, trying to steady the panic in his heart. Just then Sarah appeared at his office with a lovingly prepared lunchbox. Elias, I made you lunch. Her smile was gentle, just like in his memories. At the sight of her, Elias immediately cast Helen out of his thoughts. Right now Sarah needed him. Once the child was born and he remarried Helen, she would naturally forgive him. How has Helen been these days? I'm a little worried about her. Sarah's voice was cautious, probing whether Elias had been in contact with Helen. Though she and Elias already had a marriage certificate, there was nothing between them as husband and wife. And with her being pregnant, she couldn't exactly force intimacy. If she took the initiative, the image Elias held of her might shatter. But if their relationship didn't progress further, her child might still end up fatherless, and that was unacceptable. Chapter 05. One night, Elias drank too much. When he staggered back to the villa, barely able to stand, Sarah, watching him in his drunken state, finally seized her chance. Under the guise of sober-up soup, she brought him a strong aphrodisiac she had been preparing for a long time. That night, she thought she would finally share a blissful night with Elias. But when, in his frenzy, he cried out Helen's name, her world collapsed completely. In his madness, Elias didn't notice as she pulled out her phone and snapped several photos. This time, she was determined to drive a wedge between Elias and Helen. Helen had ignored her, refused to add her on WeChat. She could still shove the photos right in her face. The next morning, Elias woke with a sharp headache, the weight of his drunken debauchery pressing down on him. Realization hit him, and guilt washed over him. I was a beast last night. Take the company's design director position as compensation. Rubbing his temples, feeling the pounding pain from both the alcohol and the chaos of the night. For the first time, Elias didn't wait for Sarah before heading to the office. Sarah, meanwhile, stroked her barely visible 3-month belly, and a dark, vicious thought rose in her heart. He thinks he can erase last night with a job title? Dream on. If Helen were still living in the villa, she would have considered aborting the child just to smear Helen with scandal. Hatred consumed her. How could that woman still occupy Elias's heart, even after she had left? Back then, Elias's heart had belonged only to her. If only she had known sooner, she thought bitterly. Chapter 06. Amid the sound of the waves, I began a new day of work. My Weibo, which I hadn't logged into for ages, suddenly kept sending me notifications. I casually opened it, only to be greeted by a series of photos that made my face flush and my heart pound. In the pictures, a man and a woman were locked in passionate embraces, looking as if they were madly in love. If the man hadn't been my ex-husband, the same ex-husband who had once told me he wanted to remarry me, I might have thought it was a beautiful love story. Then came the message attached. Helen, since you left, don't ever come back. Even if you return, it would be pointless. I am now the design director of the Coup Corporation. I am the one Elias cherishes most. I thought I wouldn't feel hurt, but when I saw that Sarah had become design director, I could hear the sound of my own heart breaking. Once, Elias Coup had admired my talent for design. I had created many best-selling products for the Coup Corporation. I even joked with him once, with skills like mine, shouldn't I be qualified to become the design director of your Coup Corporation? And how did he answer me back then? With only a degree from a domestic university. You're not enough. The design director of the Coup Corporation must be an internationally renowned designer, someone with influence in both domestic and global markets. Sarah's graduate thesis had been something I helped her with. She had nothing remarkable of her own. And yet now she was the design director of the Coup Corporation. It felt like a slap across my face. As tears slid down my cheeks, a cat suddenly jumped onto my desk. It circled my laptop a few times before curling up beside it and falling asleep. The cat was beautiful, one eye blue, the other golden, its entire body pure white. People called such cats white sapphire, or sometimes fortune cats, said to bring wealth. Its sudden arrival in my courtyard made me forget my earlier pain. I logged out of my Weibo account for good, carefully carried my laptop to the sofa, and began sketching again. The sunlight was warm. Life was still beautiful. I had no reason to waste my time on rotten people. Chapter 07. On my work account, I received a message from the Coup Corporation's representative. He said that the project we had been collaborating on would now be handed over to their new director, and asked me to add the new director on WeChat. I refused. If they wanted to work with me, they could use the same WeChat account as before. I raised my design fee tenfold. The other side was confused. Did our company somehow offend Miss Perla? On the international freelance websites, I never used my real identity. I only had the name Perla. Starting this year, too many companies have been reaching out to me to reduce unnecessary communication. My fee for all collaborations has been raised tenfold. Most of my clients were overseas companies. They wouldn't question me if they asked. I would just say old partners couldn't expect lower rates. The Coup Corporation hadn't formally signed with me yet, so they would pay the new rate. The other end fell silent for a long time. By the afternoon, I finally received their reply, and it was rather interesting. I am Sarah, the president's wife of the Coup Corporation. If Ms. Perla agrees to use last year's rates, the Coup Corporation will work exclusively with you for all of our jewelry. You won't need to worry about finding new business anymore. I replied, thank you, Madam President. The price increases because too many people want to work with me. There's no such thing as tiring negotiations. Madam, did you perhaps not finish primary school? If your company doesn't have anyone who understands design, then there's no need for us to collaborate. On the other end, the typing indicator appeared, but in the end, not a single word was sent. Sarah's degree had been purchased. Nothing infuriated her more than being reminded she lacked real qualifications. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the cat was still sleeping. I had no cat food at home, so I called the property management to help locate its owner. They came quickly. The cat was very distinctive, and since most people in the community kept large dogs, they quickly identified the owner. It turned out to be my neighbor. But my neighbor was abroad at the moment. His housekeeper had rushed back to her hometown due to family matters, leaving some cat food in the living room before leaving. He asked me to look after the cat for the time being, and said all the food was in the kitchen, since the cat had already comforted me once today. I agreed. When I brought the cat to the neighbor's house, I discovered there were 2 kitchens, one entirely dedicated to cat food. The refrigerator was stocked with food better than what most people ate, premium cat food. Chicken, fish, and organic vegetables in balanced portions. The fridge door was covered with notes detailing the cat's meal plan, specifying the exact measurements for each meal. After fumbling around to prepare the food, I decided that in this lifetime I would never consider owning a pet. Too costly, too much work. After delivering the cat to its private room, I returned to my own villa. Once, I had thought my house was cozy and warm, but after seeing the cat's princess room, my own house felt more like a bare-bones cell. Frustrated, I sat down and sketched several more designs. How could I possibly live worse than a cat? My life went on in an orderly manner. The only disruption was the cat next door, who not only wandered into my house every day but eventually refused to leave. The owner had said he'd be back in 3 days, but a week had passed and still no sign of him. Every night I forced the cat back into her own room, afraid she might despise the simplicity of mine and be unable to sleep. Meanwhile, Sarah finally gave in to my price, 10 times the original design fee. I didn't accept direct payment. Instead, I insisted she pay through the freelance platform. The platform would automatically transfer the money to me, and since it had strict rules for revisions, if Sarah tried to cause trouble, she wouldn't get her money back. When I received confirmation from the platform that the Coup Corporation had paid, I began working on the designs according to Sarah's requests. During the process, she tried to make things difficult with bizarre demands. Each time, I dismissed her suggestions as ignorance and told her to consult her design department supervisor first. Every time, I drove her mad with frustration. Though she had studied design, she had absolutely no talent. After a week of collaboration, she didn't dare to admit she was the design director. The title she had once flaunted so proudly on Weibo was now something she couldn't even mention. It showed just how deeply insecure she was. Eventually, she turned that WeChat account into her personal diary, posting daily photos of her and Elias eating breakfast together, cooking dinner together, going to work together, like a picture-perfect couple in love. I muted her updates. Chapter 08. The screen of Elias's phone was still open on his chat history with Helen. The last timestamp from New Year's Eve of the previous year. 2 months had passed, and she still hadn't contacted him. By now, her pregnancy should be around 7 months. Surely it must be hard for her to move around. A sudden wave of longing for his child washed over him, and he almost wanted to send Helen a message, but he forcefully suppressed that urge. Helen dared to vanish like this, and while pregnant, too, he would make her bow her head first. Sarah was much better, always considerate, always helping him, even about that night. She hadn't blamed him. Helen, on the other hand, was always so petty. When Sarah walked in, she immediately saw Elias staring blankly at his phone. She had seen it too many times before, no need to ask. She knew he was staring at Helen's chat window again. Elias, has sister contacted you? If she keeps being so willful, she'll raise the child badly. For the sake of the baby, you mustn't give in to her. She has to come back kneeling. Only then will the family be harmonious in the future. Sure enough, Elias flipped his phone face down. How's work going lately? We're collaborating with Perla now. Several official designs have already been released, and the results are excellent. Fans are begging us to make them available for purchase. If that designer didn't charge so much, I'd want her to design all the new pieces. Future sales success would all be credited to her as the design director. Sarah inwardly wanted to give all projects to Perla, but the company budget only covered part of the collection. Elias curiously opened the company's website to view the latest designs. The moment he saw them, he froze. Their style instantly reminded him of the first time he had met Helen. Her work had the same spark, elegant, refined, yet full of originality. They belonged to high luxury with impeccable taste, while also being boldly avant-garde. He had been captivated at first glance, which was why he had bought her designs. If she had continued her career in design, by now she too would be a world-renowned designer. Sarah, believing the problem was simply that the asking price was too high, lowered her voice sweetly. Elias, I have an idea. I don't know if you'd be willing to help. Only then did Elias look at her seriously, his expression gentle. As long as it's something I can do, I'll agree to anything. Sarah's heart warmed. If Helen didn't exist, she was sure she and Elias could grow old together. Perla doesn't sign her name on at least half of the designs she sells the rights to. I was thinking, could we put my name under those designs? She quickly explained. This would be for the good of the company. If we can build up a star designer, we'll save on ambassador fees. That money could then be used to commission more designs from Perla. It's a win-win situation. From the company's perspective, grooming a renowned designer would indeed boost influence. And if that designer happened to be the president's wife, it would attract even more customers and drive sales. What Sarah truly wanted was to bind herself completely to the title of Mrs. Ku, so that Elias would never be able to divorce her. She would never say this aloud. Of course, instead, she would let her reputation grow until people naturally discovered she was already married to Elias. For the sake of the Ku Corporation, divorce would no longer be an option. You've worked hard, Sarah. Handle these matters however you see fit. It's all for the company's good. I have no objections. To Elias, making Sarah famous meant that even after a divorce, she could still live well on her own. Though they thought differently, Elias and Sarah were, in the end, moving toward the same goal. Chapter 09. When I received more design orders from the Ku Corporation, I was stunned. Sarah was treating the company's money like it was nothing, placing dozens of design requests on the platform all at once. Every seasonal release for the year was submitted to me. It felt like suddenly earning 10 years' worth of money. I sent them a message. Madam President, once the orders are placed and the designs are submitted, the platform will not issue refunds. Please confirm that these orders were not made by mistake. It was an order worth a staggering 10 billion. I seriously suspected Elias had gone brain dead, but his affairs no longer had anything to do with me. As for the Ku Corporation's designs, I didn't put my soul into them. I simply made sure they met the requirements. As for designs with deeper spirit, they didn't deserve them. The reply came quickly. This has already gone through company approval. Payment has been made. Please submit the designs as soon as possible. I responded with an okay. Then I prepared to shut off my phone and bury myself in sketches. Out of that 10 billion, at least 9 billion was extra, practically my divorce settlement. The platform fees were all covered by the company. I would receive the full amount. Sarah was satisfied with my designs and hadn't made too many difficulties. My focus was to finish quickly and secure the money. Another message arrived in the middle of the night. Perla, our company will label all your designs under the name of the president's wife. We hope you won't hinder the development of the Ku Corporation. We have purchased the copyrights. By the time I saw it, it was 7 in the morning. I replied simply, okay. Since I knew the designs were for the Ku Corporation, I only used a fraction of my true skill. Stamping my name on them would only tarnish my reputation. To speed up my process, I drafted the initial concepts with pen and paper first. As I buried myself in a mountain of sketches, the cat appeared again. By now, I no longer bothered to close the door. She didn't climb over the wall anymore. She walked straight in through the front gate. I don't have time to play with you today. Go amuse yourself, I said without looking up, my pen scratching furiously across the page. Is my beautiful neighbor a jewelry designer? A magnetic voice drifted through the courtyard. I looked up and saw an extraordinarily handsome man, better looking than my favorite celebrity crush. Taller and with an even more perfect build. My pen slipped helplessly from my fingers. The man's long, elegant hands were cradling the cat. She looked utterly content in his arms. I swallowed hard. I just do some drawing. And what does my handsome neighbor do? I run errands, he said casually, before sitting gracefully across from me. His long legs filled my vision. Tall men were made entirely of legs, it seemed, and that long neck was the kind of thing I'd dreamed of sketching. If any of my art class models back then had looked even 1/10 as good as him, I would have mastered the human skeleton drawings with ease. Thank you for taking care of Milo recently. Tomorrow I'm hosting a birthday party with a few close friends. I hope you'll join us. His tone was not a request. I had nothing else to do, so I agreed. Our villas were all private, but his was the only one that even included its own piece of ocean. A man like him didn't need many friends, but he was not someone I could afford to offend. All right, do I need to wear formal attire? I don't really have any dresses. After leaving the Koo household, I only brought a few changes of clothes. Since I've been working from home, there's been no need to waste money on expensive gowns. They're all childhood friends. Wear whatever you like. It was then I learned that this man had left the country at age 10, only returning last year. This would be his first banquet since coming back. He didn't say much, and I didn't ask further. We were simply neighbors. To me, buying a villa here was my life's investment. To him, it was just a temporary stop. I was well aware we lived in different worlds. He left with the cat in his arms. I closed my door. Now that her owner was back, the cat wouldn't have to spend all her days with me anymore. I buried myself in sketching for the rest of the day. That very night, I submitted 5 designs. Sarah accepted them much faster than I had expected. Just as I was still surprised, her message arrived. I've already uploaded those designs to the company website. MS. Perla. Remember our agreement. I am the president's wife of the Koo Corporation. I am not someone you can afford to offend. So that was it. She was desperate to publish quickly, eager for fame. It wasn't necessarily a bad thing. The faster I finished, the sooner I got paid. I replied simply, don't worry. These kinds of plain designs weren't worthy of my name anyway. In the past, it took me half a month to deliver a single concept after multiple revisions and validations. Now I had produced 5 designs in just one day. Once the payment for the 5 designs came through, I slept soundly that night. The next morning, I was awakened by the noise of a helicopter. My neighbor's friends had arrived by helicopter. I stayed inside, holed up in my office to work. By evening, I had completed 10 more designs. Without even reviewing them, the company approved the work online and confirmed the orders. I had never made money this easily in my life. For once, I didn't find Sarah so unbearable. She wasn't just a mistress, she was my god of wealth. In the past, each of my projects cost $1 million US, and I only did 3 a year. Each project required several revised versions, every version taking at least a month. Sarah not only gave me 10 times my usual rate, but also accepted 15 designs in just 2 days. Tomorrow, with another 5 submissions, I would have earned 10 billion. It was almost too good to be true. Even if Elias had given me 2 billion in the divorce, that would have been his absolute limit. Meanwhile, the neighbor's villa grew increasingly lively. Bonfires, lights, the smell of barbecue drifting into my house. Through the fence I saw many guests in elegant attire. For a moment, I hesitated. Should I really go over in a t-shirt and jeans? While I was wavering, my neighbor appeared at my door carrying his cat. Milo noticed you weren't there yet, so I came to check on you. His voice was warm, his outfit a simple set of casual clothes, making my own casual wear seem less out of place. I followed him next door. The courtyard was buzzing with life. When people saw me enter beside him, The guests all turned to look. "This is my servant." I cut him off quickly, because among the guests I had unexpectedly spotted Elias and Sarah. Both of them looked utterly stunned. My neighbor stiffened slightly. I tugged at his arm and added, "I'm his servant. I help take care of Milo to sell the act." I scooped the cat into my arms. Milo nuzzled me affectionately and then settled quietly against my chest. "Sister, can I pet the kitty?" Just now she wouldn't let me. A little girl asked, her big eyes blinking with excitement. I crouched down so she could stroke Milo. The cat didn't move at all. She let me touch her. The girl squealed, jumping with joy. That little scene was enough to convince everyone I really was the neighbor's servant, though I still didn't even know his name. He quickly gathered himself and addressed the crowd. "Thank you all for coming all the way out here to celebrate my return." The atmosphere warmed again. I spent most of the night surrounded by children, letting them play with the cat, aside from the two sharp, out-of-place stares burning into my back. The evening passed harmoniously. When the banquet ended, most guests left by helicopter. A smaller group stayed overnight. My neighbor's villa was enormous, with plenty of spare rooms. To keep up the pretense of me being his servant, he arranged for me to stay in the servants' quarters. "If you need anything, call me." He entered his number into my phone, saving it under the name Christopher. I thanked him, then locked the door behind me. I also locked the windows tight. In the middle of the night, someone knocked on my door. I pretended not to hear. "Elias? What are you doing here?" It was Christopher's voice. "Christopher, I must have gone the wrong way." Silence fell outside once more. The next morning, when I went downstairs, all the guests were gone except for Elias and Sarah. Everyone else was busy. Christopher was sitting on the sofa reading a newspaper. I hesitated, then went into the kitchen to grab something to eat. Eating at the same table as Elias would only make me lose my appetite. The servant was kind enough to bring me milk and eggs. I didn't feel like speaking to anyone, so I went to play with Milo. The moment he saw me, he leapt into my arms. "He really likes you." Christopher suddenly set down his newspaper and gave me a meaningful look. In the past, he wouldn't let anyone hold him except me. Suddenly, the cat in my arms felt scorching hot. Elias's gaze toward Milo was like he was looking at a mistress who had stolen his wife. "Elias, when are you leaving?" Christopher had also noticed Elias's strange stare. "Aren't you busy these days?" "Quite busy. We've launched a lot of new products, so I'm working on promotion." Sarah lifted her chin proudly. "Elias has placed the entire design department's responsibilities on me. I'm exhausted, so I just want him to accompany me here to rest for a couple of days." "President Christopher, you don't mind, do you?" I was speechless. Sarah was truly relentless in showing her generosity in front of Elias. It was a pity she hadn't been born in ancient times. She would have made a perfect matriarch. "Christopher won't mind. We grew up together. The sea here is clean. Today I want to go sailing. Can't your little maid accompany us?" "No," I refused instantly. "I'm afraid of water. I'm a coward." Christopher finally put his newspaper back on the rack. "If Elias wants to go sailing, I'll go with you." "What does a servant know about the sea? She's only here to help me look after Milo, nothing more." "Exactly. She can't do anything else. Not even cook." Elias blurted it out without realizing how inappropriate it sounded. The three of them went sailing. I returned to my villa, locked all the doors and windows, and finished the last 5 designs. At noon, I submitted them. Sarah was too busy enjoying herself with Elias to even bother reviewing them, not that she could tell good design from bad anyway. As expected, the moment I sent them over, the reply was instant, "Okay." The platform confirmed the orders quickly, and the 10 billion was deposited into my account. This place was no longer safe for me. I had no patience to keep playing around with Elias. I immediately rented a car and went traveling. 10 days later, when I returned to the villa and confirmed that Elias was no longer at Christopher's house, I finally felt at ease. "Thank you." I brought some local specialties I had bought during my trip and left them at Christopher's villa. "Milo missed you." The white cat circled me twice before I reluctantly scooped her up. "I missed you too. If you weren't so expensive to keep, I'd want one of my own." "Helen." I was still kissing the cat's head when I heard Elias's voice. "You gave up being the president's wife, only to become a servant? What are you thinking? Why would you degrade yourself like this?" The servants in the courtyard looked utterly stricken. their expressions changing again and again. I wanted so badly to slap Elias across the face. If you can't speak decently, then shut your mouth. President Koo, your wife is Sarah. As for me, I earn my living with honest labor. I don't steal. I don't rob. I haven't done anything shameful. Just like you, I hold my head high as a human being. There was no such thing as degrading myself. Elias Koo's face twisted with rage. Helen, what did you just say? You dare compare me to a servant? Hearing those words, I couldn't hold back anymore. I gave a cold laugh. President Koo, in my eyes, you are not even as noble as these servants. At least they would never abandon their own children just to father someone else's. What kind of despicable bloodline could do something like that? I believe they wouldn't, because they would love their own children first. Elias's face turned dark as iron. Behind him came the sound of soft sobs. Sarah stepped into view. Sister, how can you say that about Elias? He only pitied my child. He was just afraid my baby would be despised as an illegitimate child. He was only being kind, being good-hearted. Her belly was visibly round now, the pregnancy obvious. With her tears and pitiful appearance, she looked utterly fragile. Elias immediately flew into a rage. You cold, heartless woman, do you have no shred of compassion? You. But halfway through, his words stumbled. His eyes fell on my flat stomach. He rushed up to me. Where is my child? I shoved him away in disgust. President Koo, your child is in Sarah's belly. Don't mistake the baby. I mean my child. Your child? Didn't you already abandon him? You couldn't bear for another child to be illegitimate. But you let yours become one. You let him hate you, despise you. He wouldn't want to know you even in death. Elias roared like a madman. No, that's not true. You must have already given birth. Your due date should have passed by now. He demanded that I hand over his child. I slapped him hard across the face. President Koo, your child is gone. If he had been born now, wouldn't he have been just another fatherless bastard? Wasn't it you who gave him up? Sarah, watching Elias's madness, collapsed to the ground. I couldn't tell if she truly fainted or was only pretending. But at this moment, her timing was impeccable. Your Sarah has fainted. Your child is in danger. President Koo. I bit down hard on those last words. Elias turned his head and saw Sarah lying unconscious on the ground. He hesitated, but finally, he picked her up and left. As I watched their backs disappear, I suddenly realized my face was wet with tears. A broad chest enveloped me in its warmth. It's over now. His voice was low, steady, full of strength. My long-suppressed grievances burst forth like a flood. My body trembled as I cried and cried, until finally I cried myself into exhaustion and fell asleep in his arms. When I woke again, night had already fallen. I heard voices outside, Elias and Christopher. I want to go in and see her. You'd better leave. She's my wife. You already have a new wife now. Christopher, don't push me. And don't push me. This is my house. You can't come here and cause chaos. If you dare make trouble again, I won't hesitate to strike at the Koo Corporation or suggest that the old man replace its heir. Elias's voice fell silent. I lay quietly in bed, surrounded by the night. The sound of waves crashing against the shore reminded me that everything just now had truly happened. Weak and powerless to rise, I drifted back into sleep. This time, I slept until noon the next day. I quickly noticed the servants looking at me differently. When I realized I had been sleeping in the master bedroom, surrounded by a man's clothes and belongings, I finally understood why. Flustered, I packed up and prepared to head home, but Christopher stopped me. Stay here for now. Elias isn't going to give up so easily. You should keep focusing on your work. And when you have time, just take care of Milo. The servants brought me a stack of drawing supplies and a brand new, high-performance laptop, perfect for design work. I was placed in the study to draw. Christopher's desk was huge. I sat across from him and worked. Thankfully, his desktop monitor was large enough to act as a barrier between us, sparing me the awkwardness of sitting face to face. He spent the whole day absorbed in his own work, treating me as if I were invisible. My initial tension gradually faded, and I began to focus entirely on my new designs. I still had projects for 2 overseas clients, both long-term partners. These were special orders, limited edition pieces with extremely high requirements. I poured myself into them, determined to create something unique. When the final drafts were done, Christopher studied them for a long time before calmly asking, "You're Perla, aren't you?" My heart jolted. Though I kept my expression neutral, my designs never carried a signature, and my style was flexible. How could he have recognized me? Seeing my confusion, he answered gently, "Perla's work always integrates the letter into the design. Yours is subtle, but it's there, and in recent years, the only designer I've seen capable of producing such exquisite pieces is Perla." "You also own a jewelry company?" I asked cautiously. Christopher nodded and pointed at one of the drafts. "If I'm not mistaken, this one is for RD in Country M." "That's my company." I suddenly felt exposed, stripped bare. For the first time in years, someone had recognized me. I had always embedded it in my designs as a personal watermark, except in the pieces I did for the Coup Corporation. I wanted to deny it, but since I had already submitted that design to RD, I could only give a sheepish smile. "So you're the boss. If you're not satisfied, I can make revisions." "No need. You're the only designer my partner has never complained about. He said he's never seen anyone deliver designs that surpass expectations, and you often send improved versions for free." I lowered my head, cheeks warm with embarrassment. His words left me flustered. I was just a perfectionist. I didn't want anything with my name attached to be less than perfect. If he knew how I handled the Coup Corporation, though, he might think differently of me. I just judge by the company. If a company doesn't value people, I won't give them my best work. Like the Coup Corporation, the first time I met you, I could tell your designs weren't serious. Later I found out those were for them. They don't appreciate good work, so why feed them excellence? This time, I lowered my head in shame. When Elias divorced me, he left me with nothing. I only wanted a little revenge. Christopher let out a soft laugh and picked up the design meant for RD. "Then let me keep this one." He placed it directly into his safe right in front of me. I was speechless. "Helen, give me back my child." Elias's voice blurred again, this time amplified through a megaphone. I had no idea what madness had seized him. I walked to the window and saw him standing outside the villa gates, shouting into the megaphone while several bodyguards held him back. From Christopher's study, I printed out the medical certificate of my abortion and slipped it into my pocket before heading downstairs. The moment he saw me, Elias lowered the megaphone. "Helen, our child is still alive, isn't he? Give him back to me. Once Sarah's baby is born and registered, we'll remarry and give our child a legitimate identity." I stepped coldly toward the doorway, but he kept rambling on. "You're just a servant now. You can't even feed yourself. You have no right to make my child suffer with you. If you don't give him back, I'll take you to court." I shoved the abortion certificate deeper into my pocket. "Fine, go sue me. See if the court can conjure a child for you as compensation." Time had flown. Sarah's pregnancy should be nearly 8 months along by now. What kind of hysteria drove Elias to show up like this? Sarah arrived less than 5 minutes later. Clutching her belly, she looked exhausted, but still put on a mask of righteous shock as she addressed me. "Sister, just return the child to Elias. Using a baby to control him is far too cruel. He's been losing sleep worrying about the child's well-being. I've been handling the company matters all by myself. If you truly love Elias, you should want what's best for him, not drag him down." What kind of twisted logic was this? I laughed, anger bubbling over. "You both know I can't help you, yet you still come clinging to me. Aren't you ashamed? You think we're clinging to you? This is about the child. Your baby must be about 3 months old now. How can you be so heartless, leaving him without a father and without a mother?" Sarah's righteous tone only darkened Elias's gaze toward me. "If anything happens to my child, I'll never forgive you." "Your child, Elias? Do you even know what shame is? You abandoned him, and now you pretend to be some devoted father? Do you know that delayed affection is cheaper than dirt? If you too want a child, simple, take me to court. If the court rules the child is yours, then I'll give him to you." This man was not worthy of being a father. I turned my back and returned to the villa, ignoring the barking dogs outside. Later, I heard Sarah's scream followed by the sound of a car leaving. One of the servants came rushing to gossip with me. "Our master is ruthless indeed. He had someone strike that woman on the spot. Left her bleeding." Hearing that, I felt no sympathy at all. In fact, I found it oddly satisfying. Chapter 10. When Elias rushed Sarah, who was covered in blood, to the hospital, the doctor said her amniotic fluid had broken, and the baby could only be delivered by C-section. An 8-month-old baby, considered premature. When the child was born, he was tiny. He didn't like to cry, spending all his time inside the incubator. Elias stared at the newborn, and the thought that his own child might have gone through the same ordeal made it so painful that he could barely breathe. The last time he saw Helen, she had already finished her postpartum recovery period, which meant her delivery wasn't full-term either. He remembered the doctor's words: premature babies need careful protection in the first 6 months to grow up healthy. Otherwise, the lack of security could lead to many problems. Thinking about how his own child hadn't even reached 6 months yet, he couldn't hold back. He drove to Christopher's villa, but this time there were far more bodyguards than before. Guards appeared even a kilometer away from the villa. He couldn't get close. Inside the villa, there was no sign of the child. He waited an entire night but never heard the baby's cry. Helen had really left the baby to fend for itself. His child should grow up cherished and adored, not like some wild grass left untended. He called Helen, but as soon as she heard his voice, she hung up. When he called again, she had already blocked him. For the first time in his life, he felt utterly helpless. Sarah called him again, saying the baby needed someone to watch over it, since she couldn't get out of bed after the C-section. Elias returned to the hospital, and when he saw that baby, his longing for his own child only grew stronger. Thinking of how his child must be just as helpless, his heart twisted in pain. In the end, he had his assistant file a lawsuit in court, requesting custody of the child. He believed that compared with Helen, it was obvious to any reasonable person who the child should be entrusted to. Chapter 11. When I received the call from the court, I froze for a moment. The child was gone last year on New Year's Eve. I was 5 months pregnant when I divorced him, and I had an abortion then. He wants to be the father of someone else's baby? I left the marriage with nothing. No child. No support. How could I possibly have given birth and raised a baby? The person on the other end clearly hadn't expected that answer. I added the court official on WeChat and sent him the divorce agreement, the divorce certificate, and the abortion record from that time. When everything was finally done, I noticed Christopher leaning against my doorway, lost in thought. He only came back to himself when he saw me turn around. When we were kids, Sarah used to play with us too. Once, Elias fell into the river, and Sarah risked her life to save him. Ever since then, he treated her differently. He never figured out the difference between gratitude for saving his life and romantic love. That no longer mattered to me. They've already slept together. I briefly explained what Sarah had sent me. Christopher fell completely silent. After a while, he said quietly, "Not all men are like that." Chapter 12. When the court official contacted Elias, he was in the middle of learning how to prepare formula for the baby. He thought that since he would be taking care of his own child in the future, he needed to learn this as well. What? When he clearly heard what the court official said, the can of formula in his hand slipped to the floor, spilling powder everywhere. "Mr. Koo, your child was aborted last year on New Year's Eve at the First People's Hospital of Jing City. I also confirmed it with the doctor who performed the surgery. She said Helen had no money, no job, and absolutely no way to raise a baby, so she had no choice but to end the pregnancy. Mr. Koo, when you kicked out a 5 months pregnant woman with nothing, you never intended for her to keep the baby, did you?" Even the court official couldn't stand hearing this. Listening to the doctor's account, he was so angry he nearly cursed Elias for being inhuman. The court official left Elias with the doctor's phone number. When the doctor answered, he said, "You're that Elias who divorced his wife on New Year's Eve last year? Your wife is Helen, the one you drove out with nothing while she was 5 months pregnant?" Hearing this, Elias suddenly realized that maybe he had gone too far. How could he have left Helen with nothing? How desperate she must have been at that time. "Doctor, she didn't really abort the baby, did she? If she hadn't, how was she supposed to survive? What? Go beg in the streets with a big belly? It's been 8 months since the abortion. Now you ask me? That child has long since reincarnated. Maybe in a few decades you can ask me again. By then, who knows? Your child may have reincarnated several times already. Provided, of course, they don't run into another heartless father like you." The doctor's words made Elias's head buzz. Impossible. Helen had looked forward to that child so much. How could she have aborted it? It had to be a lie. Doctor, are you and Helen trying to deceive me together? Are you insane? I don't even know your wife. Stop calling me. You're a jinx. The doctor, frightened and annoyed, hung up. Elias coughed up a mouthful of blood and collapsed on the spot. When he woke up again, he was lying in a hospital bed. He wanted to call Helen, to tell her he truly hadn't meant it, but his calls couldn't get through. Dragging his weakened body, he once more went to Christopher's villa. Chapter 13. I sat by the window, watching the rain outside. With recent projects completed, I planned to take a break. Suddenly, I saw someone kneeling in the rain. Tilting my head, I wondered which lunatic would kneel on the main road of the villa district in a downpour. When Christopher came upstairs, he saw me standing on the balcony, watching the person in the rain. That's Elias. He said it while studying me, as if trying to gauge my reaction. I looked away, uninterested. So that's who the crazy person is, kneeling on the main road in heavy rain. Doesn't it make your heart ache? Are you kidding? A man who doesn't want his own child but wants someone else's. Why should I feel sorry for him? I was only wondering when his madness would finally end. I couldn't live at Christopher's house forever. Actually, there's a very good way to get rid of him. Hearing that, I perked up, my eyes lighting with curiosity. What way? Marry me. He crouched down, placing his hands on my chair, trapping me in that confined space. Forget it. We're not from the same world. I don't plan on jumping into the same pit twice. I can transfer all of my assets to you first. I don't have the hobby of playing father to someone else's child. I leaned back a little. Who knows? For all I know, you might even like men. At that, a warm kiss landed on my forehead. I'll prove it with time. I like women, and only you. Just as I was about to say something, I saw the man in the distance collapse. Christopher's bodyguard considerately folded away the binoculars. I was speechless. Chapter 14. For the rest of the time, I stayed in the courtyard, painting and tending flowers, paying no attention to the outside world. Christopher brought me the latest news. Elias had been sick for more than a month after going back. After registering Sarah's child under his household, Elias, despite Sarah's objections, dragged her to the Civil Affairs Bureau and forced her to get a divorce certificate. When Christopher saw I had no reaction to this, he finally added, Elias is outside the gate, strapped with explosives. Do you want to see him? Once again facing Elias at the entrance of Christopher's villa, I felt no ripple in my heart. He was strapped with bombs all over his body, holding a remote in his hand. Helen, let's remarry, okay? I really didn't mean it. I truly love you. You know that. As for Sarah, I was only helping her. I threw the explicit photos Sarah had sent me of them together out the door. Before deleting my Weibo, I had forced myself to save those disgusting photos. I thought maybe they might come in handy one day. Elias stared at the photos on the ground, his face pale. Helen, let me explain. I thought it was you at the time. I was drunk. His explanation was weak and pointless. I had no interest in listening further. Elias, you're tainted. Ever since I aborted the child, there has never been any possibility between us again. At that, his grip on the remote became frantic, his whole demeanor unhinged. I'm not tainted. Helen, you can sleep with another man. Then we'll be even, okay? We can still have more children. If you don't want to give birth, we can go abroad and find someone else to help. As long as you're with me, I'll agree to anything. I can't lose you. I didn't realize my own heart before. I was mistaken. Sarah is only my savior. I mistook gratitude for unattainable love all this time. The bodyguard reacted quickly and snatched the remote away. If you keep clinging to me, I'll just marry someone else, I said coldly. Christopher was right. Marriage was the best way to end Elias's endless entanglement. Helen, did you just accept my proposal? Christopher quickly stepped forward, bent down to kiss my forehead, and took the chance to draw me into his arms. I hadn't meant it that way. But at this moment, if acting could make Elias leave, I was willing to play along. Elias's eyes widened in shock. Then he fainted on the spot, The bodyguards took the chance to remove all the explosives from him. I let out a breath of relief. I had really feared my villa might get blown up. I wasn't even sure I had bought home insurance yet. Helen, you just accepted my proposal, didn't you? Why? I asked. We had only just met. That day when I carried Milo into your yard. The way you painted in the sunlight was so beautiful. You looked almost exactly like the wife I had dreamed of. For years I've wanted to find Perla, the one whose flowers healed me. Only then did I remember. A long time ago, the boss of RD had asked me for drawings. And each time I handed in work, I had casually given them a few extra sketches. In front of the safe, Christopher proudly took out those drawings I had given to RD. These are my treasures. What if I turn out to be an old lady? Then I'll call you Grandma. The following scenes are paid content. Please use your imagination. Story 2. Chapter 1. I climbed the mountain all night in the pouring rain, searching desperately. I couldn't find the bracelet my fiancé and his childhood sweetheart had supposedly lost during their camping trip. Soaking wet and exhausted, I was finally called back down the mountain by a phone call. My fiancé, Sam, sat in the back seat of the car, speaking casually. Lily got it wrong. Her bracelet was in her bag the whole time. Thanks for your hard work tonight. Beside him, Lily rested her chin on Sam's arm, clinging to him coquettishly. Sorry, sis-in-law. I made a mistake and made you search all day and night. I ignored her, shivering from the cold, my gaze fixed on Sam's sharp and handsome face. Desperately, I pleaded. When are we leaving? I bought the tickets. My dad, he doesn't have much time left. Sam frowned at me, his cold voice cutting through the rain like a knife. It was just a joke. Did you actually take it seriously? Don't think I don't know. This is all part of a scheme you and your family cooked up to trick me into marrying you, isn't it? His mocking gaze pierced straight through my chest like a dagger. I opened my mouth, trembling, trying to respond. Suddenly, Lily coughed delicately, covering her chest with a hand. Sam's attention instantly shifted to her, his tone soft with concern. What's wrong? Did you catch a chill? I told you not to come and get involved. The bracelet was found. A phone call would have been enough. But you insisted on coming. Don't you know how fragile your body is? Sam glanced at me briefly and said nonchalantly, Ruby, walk back by yourself. You're soaking wet. You'll just dirty the car. I blinked as the rain ran down my face. I leaned on the car window, begging, Sam, you said you'd go with me. You promised. Sam pried my hand away with disdain. Ruby, have some self-respect. Are you really this desperate to get married? Then he ordered the driver, and the car sped away without hesitation. I staggered and fell to the ground, staring blankly at the faint light breaking through the sky. Suddenly, my phone rang sharply. My mother's anguished voice screamed through the receiver. Your dad is gone. Come back now. Tears burst from my eyes. I struggled to stand, only to collapse onto the ground again, losing consciousness entirely. By the time I returned home, 2 days had passed. My father's body was laid out in the hall. My mother, red-eyed and grief-stricken, slapped me twice. You're useless. You let your father die with regret, even on his deathbed. He just wanted to see you get married. 10 years of dating. Ruby, 10 years. You're absolutely worthless. I had no words. Kneeling on the ground, I had no more tears left to cry. Sam and I were college sweethearts, dating from freshman year until graduation. Now, 10 years have passed, yet I remain nothing more than his so-called fiancé. I wanted to get married before turning 30, to fulfill my terminally ill father's last wish. But every time I brought it up, Sam always had an excuse to refuse. Things became even worse after his childhood sweetheart, Lily, returned from abroad. This time, when my father was critically ill, I begged Sam to accompany me home. I endured his endless difficulties, and in return, I was met with mockery and humiliation, and I didn't even get to see my father one last time. I regret it. If I had known it would come to this, why did I waste 10 years of my life with Sam? That night, while keeping vigil over my father's body, Sam called. His tone was as indifferent as ever. Where the hell are you? The house is full of trash, And you didn't even bother to clean up. Chapter 2. I replied hoarsely. The cleaning lady's contact is on the fridge. Call her. I don't have time. Sam didn't say a word. A moment later, I heard a loud crash on the other end of the line. Ruby, you're really something. You're throwing a tantrum for days over something so trivial? If I don't see you at home tomorrow, we're done. I stayed silent for a moment before replying slowly. Fine. Before I could say another word, Sam hung up on me. I knew he was angry again. In the past, this was when I'd lower my head and apologize. Because in this relationship, Sam had never once compromised. But now, I was tired. Let it be. The day I returned to the city, I saw Lily's latest social media post. The photos showed blue skies and white clouds. Sam had his arm around Lily's shoulders, smiling intimately as they leaned into each other. Finally got enough people to play this murder mystery game I've been wanting to try. What a coincidence. I'd mentioned this very same game to Sam twice before. The first time, he brushed it off casually. The second time, he snapped at me. Ruby, how old are you? Do you think you're still a kid? All you ever want to do is play, play, play. If you're not tired of it. I am. Can't you think about me for once? Turns out, it's a completely different story with someone else. That evening, I returned to my apartment. I found that at some point, the door lock had been replaced with an electronic one. As the sky grew darker and colder, I called Sam 10 times, but he didn't answer. On the 11th call, I gave up and called a locksmith. The locksmith arrived with his tools just as Sam and Lily returned. Sam walked up to me briskly, his tone dripping with mockery. I thought you died out there and weren't coming back for good. He glanced at the locksmith, his expression turning cold. Why the hell did you call a locksmith? I looked at him calmly and replied, I called you 10 times, and you didn't answer. I thought you weren't coming back, so I had the locksmith open the door. Sam paused for a moment, then justified himself as if he was in the right. My phone died. I didn't say anything more, nor did I ask why he didn't send me the new password. After paying the locksmith for his time, I stood quietly to the side. Sam hesitated, seeming like he wanted to say something but stopped himself. Suddenly, Lily let out an exaggerated "oh no," and leaned against the wall, gasping for air. Sam, my heart feels a little uncomfortable. Sam didn't bother responding to me and hastened to unlock the door. The moment we stepped inside, I finally understood the conflicted look on his face earlier. This home now had a lot of someone else's things. Lily's flashy high heels practically filled the entire shoe rack. Sam spoke casually. Lily's been living alone and got stalked, so I brought her over to stay for a few days. She'll move out once she finds a new place. After saying that, he glanced at me warily, as if bracing for an outburst. I gave him a smile. How about letting her stay in the master bedroom? I cleaned it a couple of days ago. Chapter 3. I meant what I said. But Sam's face instantly darkened. Ruby, stop messing around. Lily's only staying for a few days. Once she finds a place, she'll leave. She's like a little sister to me. Could you really bear to see her wandering homeless? Lily gently tugged at Sam's sleeve. Sam, maybe I should just go. There are hotels nearby where I can stay for the night. Please don't argue with your fiancé because of me. As she spoke, her eyes reddened, and she looked at me pitifully. Sis-in-law, there's really nothing going on between me and Sam. Please don't misunderstand. I smiled faintly. Sam shot me a fierce glare. If there was anything between Lily and me, you wouldn't have even had a chance 10 years ago. Lily, stay here as long as you want. If she dares to give you attitude, just let me know. Half embracing Lily, Sam led her to the guest room. I turned and went into the master bedroom. On the dressing table sat a small notebook, no bigger than the palm of my hand. Inside, it detailed 10 years of bank transfers Sam had made to Lily. It was 3 years into my relationship with Sam when I learned about his frail childhood sweetheart. I never doubted him, nor did I know that while he claimed to be broke, he had been sending most of his salary to Lily while she studied abroad. The two of us struggled in a big city, living in a basement, eating instant noodles. When I fell ill, I could only take the cheapest medicine to get by. On my birthdays, We couldn't even afford a 6-inch cake. I lived like that for 7 long years. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. It was a WeChat message from Lily, sis-in-law. I think I might have left something in the master bedroom. Did you see it? I didn't reply. Chapter 4. The next morning, Sam and Lily went to the office together. Not long after Lily returned to the country, Sam immediately gave her the position of his assistant. As for me, the former assistant, I was reassigned to the sales department. Lily had messed up multiple times, delaying work and drawing criticism from colleagues. Sam, in his rage to defend her, fired the senior colleague who complained. Now everyone knew Sam and Lily's relationship was anything but ordinary. It reminded me of the time it was pouring rain, and I begged him to drop me off at the company entrance. He refused outright. Company policy prohibits office romances. As the boss, I need to lead by example. Since then, no matter how bad the weather was, I never asked to ride in his car again. Now that I'd decided to leave him, thinking about these moments didn't stir any emotions in me anymore. If we were going to separate, I wanted a clean break. I started packing up my belongings. Years of clothes and other items fit neatly into a 26-inch suitcase, more than enough. Those early years had been so hard that frugality had become second nature to me. I also found the ring I had saved up for years to buy, intending to return it. At the jewelry store, while the clerk was inspecting the ring, Sam called me. "Ruby, where are you?" "I'm busy," I answered casually. Sam's voice dropped, clearly trying to suppress his anger. "Turn around." Instinctively, I turned to see Sam and Lily walking into the store together. When Sam saw the ring in the clerk's hands, his expression changed immediately. "You came to the jewelry store to buy a ring? Ruby, how many times do I have to tell you? I have no intention of getting married right now. Do you really think buying a ring and trying to propose will make me say yes? Ruby, this kind of behavior is no different from coercion." I opened my mouth to speak, but before I could say anything, Lily joined in, looking indignant. "Ruby, no matter what, something as serious as marriage should at least be discussed with Sam first." "You're both absolutely right," I said, nodding in agreement. Then I turned to the clerk, who had been silently observing the drama. "Is the inspection done? If there are no issues, please process the refund." Chapter 5. Sam and Lily froze in place. After the refund was processed, I stood up and left. Sam chased after me, grabbing my hand. "Ruby, wait a minute. Were you returning the ring?" I pulled my hand free, my tone calm. "Didn't you already see it yourself?" Sam frowned. "When did you buy the ring? How come I didn't know?" I smiled faintly. "There's no point in discussing that now. Lily is waiting for you. I'll be going." I turned to leave, but Sam gripped my hand even tighter. He stared at my face for a long moment before asking, almost curiously, "Ruby, I brought Lily to this place. Why are you so calm? What kind of reaction are you expecting? For me to cry, scream, get jealous of Lily, and question you? But isn't that exactly what you hate the most?" I smiled again and walked away. That evening, Sam brought me a platinum necklace adorned with gemstones. He opened the box, took out the necklace, and fastened it around my neck. Then he kissed me gently on the cheek. "Sweetheart, here's a necklace for now. In a little while, I'll buy you a ring, okay?" I've heard this line countless times over the past 10 years. I nodded. "Okay." Then I removed the necklace and put it back in the box. Sam hesitated, his gaze drifting to the dressing table. His expression froze when he noticed something. "Where did all the things on the table go?" he asked, confused. "I threw them away," I replied. "They were too old. I thought I'd try something new." I didn't mention my plans to leave, and Sam, as usual, asked casually and didn't seem to really care. 3 days later, I received confirmation of my resignation. That night, the company's year-end party took place. In the past, Sam never bothered to remind me about these events. This time was no different. I was browsing for train tickets online when I came across Lily's latest social media post. "Boss is taking me out to see the world. So nervous." In the photo, A finely dressed woman in an elegant gown stood on a balcony, her wrist adorned with a striking bracelet. I shot up from my seat, staring hard at the bracelet in the picture. That bracelet was my family heirloom, a gift from my father after he met Sam and believed I had found the one. I had kept it in my drawer, but now it was on Lily's wrist. Wearing simple casual clothes, I headed to the banquet hall. By the time I arrived, the party was nearly over, and most people had left. Ignoring the curious stares, I walked straight to Sam. Lily noticed me first and called out sweetly, "Ruby, why are you dressed like that?" I walked closer, getting a clear view of the bracelet on her wrist. Completely oblivious, Lily held up her wrist to show off. "Isn't it beautiful?" Sam gave it to me. I couldn't hold back anymore. Grabbing her hair, I slapped her across the face. "You dare hit me!" Lily screamed at the top of her lungs. The people who had started to leave stopped in their tracks, staying to watch the drama unfold. Sam hurried over and pulled me back. "Ruby, what are you doing? Are you crazy? Do you have no sense of occasion?" His grip was so tight it hurt my hand. In return, I slapped him across the face. Sam stared at me in disbelief. "Ruby, you've completely lost it." Tears welled in my eyes, but I smiled bitterly. A rich boss like you, using his fiancée's family heirloom to spoil his mistress. Have I been too patient all this time, letting you think I'm easy to bully? This bracelet is my late father's keepsake. Sam, how could you dare? Sam's face froze in shock. Keepsake? Lily, crying pitifully, hid behind him. Sam, I swear I didn't know this was Ruby's father's keepsake. If I had known, I wouldn't have dared wear it even if you gave me 10 lives. Shaking like a leaf, Lily clung to Sam as he gently patted her shoulder to comfort her. Then, he took the bracelet off and handed it back to me. "Ruby, calm down. It's just a bracelet, it's meant to be worn. I'll buy you a few identical ones, okay? As for your dad, yeah, that was my bad. But this is the company's year-end party. Don't make a scene." His eyes carried a veiled threat. I took the bracelet and stepped back. No need. All I ever wanted was this bracelet. From now on, whatever you and your childhood sweetheart do is none of my business. Sam was stunned and asked, "Ruby, what do you mean?" Before I could reply, Lily clutched her chest and slowly sank to the floor. "Sam, my heart hurts." Sam, panicked, scooped her up and shouted at me, "Whatever it is, we'll talk later." With that, he carried Lily away, leaving without a second thought. I stood there, smiling faintly. Sam, there is no later for us. Chapter 6. I had been with Sam for 10 years. When he started his company, I worked tirelessly by his side. At the peak of our love, he gave me 10% of the company's shares. But now, no one in the company even knew I was a shareholder. From beginning to end, all I ever did was the most menial and thankless work. I sold the shares and boarded a plane. After landing, I called my mother back home. I told her everything about Sam's new fling, and about our breakup. "Mom, once I've settled in this new place, I'll bring you here so I can take care of you." My mother, furious on the other end of the line, started yelling, "Break up? Are you stupid? Sam is rich now, and you're leaving him? After letting him have you for 10 years? Who's going to want you now?" Listening to her harsh words, I stood frozen for a long time before finally asking hoarsely, "Mom, even if he has a mistress, even if he's with another woman and still refuses to marry me, do you really think I should shamelessly cling to him?" My mother's voice was firm and unyielding. "Yes, you should stay with him for the rest of your life. Ruby, my dear daughter, this is what you deserve. You've been with him for 10 years. You've spent the best years of your youth on him, and now you want to leave him when he's at his richest? Just to let another woman take your place? Are you stupid? Your brother is getting married, and his fiancée is asking for 300,000 yuan as a dowry. Look at our family's situation. Where could we possibly get that kind of money? This has to rely on Sam. Can't you endure a little longer? For your mother and your brother? I could afford that money myself, but why should I bear the weight of everyone else's lives?" In that moment, I realized something with absolute clarity. My mother would never stand by my side. I hung up the phone. For now, I wouldn't contact her again. I carefully chose a small but well-known town as my destination. It was currently the off-season for tourism, so the place wasn't crowded. I rented a house with a small courtyard. Here, I didn't need to worry about work, didn't have to obsess over Sam's opinions, and no longer had to drain myself emotionally. I noticed that my state of mind was visibly improving by the day. I was genuinely satisfied with my life now. A week after moving in, Sam called. His tone was slow and condescending. "Ruby, is it really necessary to blow things out of proportion over something so small? You cleared out everything, leaving nothing behind. As if you're really serious about this. We've been together for 10 years, not 10 days. I know you're upset about your dad's passing and about Lily wearing your bracelet. Come back, and Lily and I will both apologize to you. But, just so you know, she's been in the hospital for several days because of this. You should show a little more compassion. Are you done? Now it's my turn." I stayed silent until he finished speaking. "We've been together for 10 years. I started dating you when I was 23. Back then, I had my own name and identity. But over time, I became invisible in the eyes of the company. Lily has always mattered more than me. That little notebook in the drawer of my dressing table? It's a gift from your childhood sweetheart. If it weren't for her, I would have never known that while we were splitting a single pack of instant noodles to get by, you were sending her monthly transfers like clockwork. These 10 years were my mistake. I was blind, and I accept that. I sincerely wish you and your childhood sweetheart a lifetime of happiness. Sam, don't contact me again. You disgust me." I hung up the phone, deleted his number, and blocked him. I felt lighter than ever. Chapter 7. For over a month, as I rested and recovered, Sam never contacted me again. I thought Sam had finally given up. Until one early morning, my mother called me in tears, begging me to go back to Sam. "Sam truly cares about you, even in his busy schedule. He made time to visit our house. He's taken care of your brother's wedding expenses and even left money for the family. How can you not see such a good man? Sam said he's worried about you and promised that if you come back, he'll act like nothing ever happened." I was shaking with anger. I was furious at Sam for his shamelessness, using money to manipulate my family. I was furious at my mother for treating me like I was nothing, ready to sell me out in an instant. Clenching my teeth, I replied firmly, word by word, "You can give up on that idea. There's no way I'll ever get back with Sam in this lifetime. If you're so desperate to climb that ladder, then send your son. Maybe he'll catch Sam's attention." My mother had remarried, bringing my 2-year-old brother into the marriage with my father. When I was born later, most of her affection stayed with my brother. When my brother struggled in school, my mother spent large sums on tutoring for him. But when I wanted a new school uniform, I had to plead repeatedly. This favoritism continued well into my college years. My mother even tried to set me up with a divorced factory manager in his 30s, insisting I marry him so they could use the money to fund my brother's retake of his exams. It wasn't until my father erupted in anger that my mother's increasingly outrageous behavior was curbed. But now, at 33 years old, I found myself once again facing the reality of being sold off by my family. This time, I simply blocked my mother's contact entirely. My landlord, a kind older woman, noticed that I hadn't left the house in days, worried something might have happened to me. She started knocking on my door every day. She mentioned that a lantern festival was happening nearby. Left with no choice, I reluctantly agreed to go. The lively scenes and the festive atmosphere instantly lifted my gloomy mood. The small ancient town had become bustling, drawing its largest crowds during the festival. Unfortunately, this also attracted petty criminals. By the time I realized my phone was missing, the first round of fireworks had already ended. Panicked, I chased after the thief, but the cunning pickpocket disappeared into the crowd in the blink of an eye. Standing helpless at a busy intersection, I approached a park administrator for help. Half an hour later, a tall man dressed in black, with a mask covering his face, appeared holding my phone. "Excuse me, is this your phone?" Overjoyed, I nodded repeatedly, tears of relief streaming down my face. When I reached out to grab it, the man dodged slightly. Then, in a deep, magnetic voice, he said, Tell me the password first, otherwise, I can't be sure it's yours. I quickly blurted out 4 numbers. The man entered the code correctly and handed the phone back to me. Thank you so much. Holding my recovered phone tightly, I thanked him profusely. I wanted to treat him to a meal as a token of gratitude. But before I could say anything, he waved me off and walked away. I thought I wouldn't see him again. But the next morning, I discovered that the man had moved into the house next door. Chapter 8. When the man took off his mask, a handsome face was revealed. He looked strangely familiar. It wasn't until later that I realized he was a well-known singer-songwriter named Eric. He had come to the small town seeking inspiration. The next morning, I went hiking at dawn and ran into Eric again. This time, he was in a sorry state, shivering in a small pavilion on the mountain, nearly frozen. He must have spent the night up there. I called for help to carry him down the mountain. That incident brought us closer. We eventually exchanged contact information and started planning outings together. But my peaceful days didn't last long. Sam called my new number. Ruby, I brought Mom and your brother here. When can you come back to meet them? 30,000 yuan is no small sum for Mom. If we can't repay it, she could go to jail. I hadn't expected Sam to sink even lower than I thought possible. Suppressing my anger, I replied, I'll pay you back right now. Let them go, or I'll call the police. Sam refused, his tone turning pitiful. Ruby, can't you just meet me once? I know you understand, I just want to see you. If you come back and meet me, I won't ask for the money. If you don't like Lily, I'll fire her. I promise I'll never see her again. I firmly told him I would repay the money but wouldn't meet him. You're heartless. Sam spat. Soon after, Sam posted about a wedding on his social media, using a photo of me as his profile background. To make matters worse, my mother and my half-brother also began announcing the news online. Every day, I was flooded with messages from friends congratulating me. It was only then I realized Sam's twisted plan to create the illusion of a wedding and drag me into it. Left with no choice, I spent hours explaining the situation to my friends over and over again. Chapter 9. With no other option, I packed my things and returned home. Before leaving, I told Eric about it. After I landed, Eric texted me. What's the address? I could use a change of scenery too. I hesitated but eventually sent him the location. Seeing Sam again, I barely recognized him. He looked thinner, more haggard, as if the vitality had drained out of him. When Sam saw me, his face lit up, and he eagerly moved closer. I stepped aside, avoiding him, and looked at him with disgust. Say what you need to say and get it over with. Sam looked utterly heartbroken. Ruby, do you really have to talk to me like this? I truly want to make things right with you. I want to apologize. Can't you give me one more chance? I laughed bitterly, anger coursing through me. Sam, you're unbelievable. Do you know how many chances I've already given you? And every single time, you've proven that you never cared about me. Enough. I don't want to argue about the past. Just delete all those ridiculous posts on your social media, or I'll report you to the police for harassment. Sam didn't respond to my demand directly. Instead, he stood up and poured me a cup of jasmine tea. My love, this is your favorite tea. These past few weeks, I've been reflecting on everything. I realized that ever since I started the company, I've been so busy that I've hardly paid you any attention. Back then, you loved this tea. Every morning before work, I would make you a cup. But over time, I stopped doing it as often. I miss those times so much. My love, just take one sip. Even if we part ways, I hope you'll at least drink this tea I made for you. I stared at him, my tone sharp. If I drink this, will you delete all that nonsense on your social media? Sam nodded, his eyes filled with feigned sincerity. I picked up the tea and drank it all in one gulp. But within moments, my head began to feel heavy, and a wave of dizziness washed over me. Realizing what was happening, I glared at Sam, horrified. You put something in this, didn't you? Sam scooped me up in his arms and carried me toward the master bedroom. I struggled with all my might, but my body felt weak and unresponsive. Ruby, stop wasting your energy. Once you're pregnant, I'll let you go. If you're carrying my child, you won't leave me. My chest tightened as a chilling fear gripped me. Sam, you're insane. Yes, I am insane, Sam admitted with a twisted smile. My love, I can't bear to lose you. He kissed my face repeatedly. I turned away with all the strength I could muster. Don't touch me. Sam paused and gently stroked the hair by my face. All right, I won't touch you. When the custom ring arrives, we'll get married. Chapter 10. In the days that followed, Sam was busy planning an indoor wedding for me. I was utterly disgusted and desperately sought opportunities to escape, but every attempt to communicate or reason with him failed. I knew then that nothing would change if I relied on Sam. Fortunately, a turning point came soon. Sam left to discuss the details of the custom ring and wouldn't be back for a while. Around noon, the door opened, and in walked Lily, dressed seductively. We stood there staring at each other for a moment. Eventually, Lily and I struck a deal. I would leave before Sam returned. But Sam had hidden my phone and ID. Wearing only slippers, I ran as fast as I could toward the police station. The police took my statement and asked me to contact someone to pick me up. Looking at the phone, my mind raced. I couldn't call my mother, and most of my friends were still connected to Sam. After some hesitation, I decided to call Eric. My voice trembled as I explained everything. On the other end of the line, I heard the rustling of movement. Wait there. I'm changing my flight right now. I'm coming. When I finally saw Eric, I broke down completely, throwing myself into his arms and sobbing uncontrollably. These past few days, locked up by Sam, with no electronic devices or anyone to talk to, I had felt like I had been transported from the modern world back to the Stone Age. The police acted quickly. When Sam, panicked, rushed back, he was immediately arrested. As they dragged him away, his bloodshot eyes glared at me fiercely. Ruby! Ruby! I stood behind Eric, unwilling to look at him again. The evidence found in Sam's house was damning, and his charges of unlawful imprisonment were indisputable. During the time Sam was detained, my mother came to find me. Her first words weren't about my well-being. Instead, she demanded I write a letter of forgiveness for Sam. Ruby, how can you be so naive? A man like Sam is a rare find. You'll never meet someone like him again. He only locked you up because you wanted to leave him. Isn't that proof enough that he loves you? Hurry up and write that letter. His lawyer said if you agree to settle this peacefully, there's still hope for you too. He loves you. He won't hold a grudge against you. My mother, pleading with me to forgive the man who had hurt me, made me feel nothing but bitter laughter. This woman, my own mother, could say such things. I looked at her and said, Mom, have you forgotten? I'm your real daughter. She frowned. It's because you're my daughter that I'm thinking about your future. I shook my head, unwilling to argue further. Leave everything you've said. Let's just pretend it was nonsense. My mother tried to hit me, just like when I was a child. But Eric, who had been silent until now, stepped forward and shielded me. My mother stumbled backward and eventually left, cursing under her breath. Sam refused to plead guilty and hired a lawyer to fight me in court. Not long after, Lily came to me with a medical report, begging me to let Sam go. The baby needs a father. Ruby, please, let Sam go. I'll keep him under control. I promise he'll never bother you again. I shook my head firmly. I don't believe any child would want a criminal for a father. While it's still early, I suggest you terminate the pregnancy. Lily refused, insisting that she and Sam were in love and accusing me of ruining their relationship. Snarling, she shouted, Ruby, I regret ever opening that door for you that day. I should have let you stay locked up. I realized then that there was no point in talking to her. Whatever happened to her in the future was no longer my concern. I kicked Lily out of my life. 2 months later, the case progressed, with overwhelming evidence against him. Sam lost the trial. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison, along with monetary compensation. At the sentencing, Sam suddenly shouted my name. I didn't look back. Outside the courtroom, Eric stood waiting, dressed entirely in black, as always, with a mask covering his face. I chuckled. Are you out of clothes, Mr. Famous Singer? Eric glanced at me briefly, then lowered his head. After a moment, I heard his soft, magnetic voice carried by the wind. I have plenty. I'll wear something else when we get back, just for you. Chapter 11, Sam's side story. Due to good behavior during my sentence, I was released a year early. Over these 4 years, Lily visited often during the first year, her pregnant belly prominent. But after I signed over the company to her, her visits became less frequent. By the 3rd and 4th years, she stopped coming altogether. I had an inkling of what had happened, and I stopped expecting anything from her. On the day of my release, an old friend came to pick me up. He threw an arm around my shoulder, saying he wanted to treat me to a meal and help me ward off bad luck. After 4 years, the bustling streets felt overwhelming. Sitting in a hot pot restaurant, I felt awkward, my reactions slow and out of sync. My friend sighed, pouring me a drink. Now that you're out, just live an honest life. And about your company, forget it. That Lily? She can't compare to even a single finger of Ruby's. That company's bankrupt now. They couldn't even pay the employees' salaries. I heard she fled abroad. I froze for a moment. It wasn't surprising. Really, I could have predicted this outcome. Lily was foolish and arrogant. I had given her the company as a foundation, thinking it would provide her and my child some stability. I asked my friend, "What about Lily's child?" My friend looked confused. "What child? She didn't have any. Unless you're talking about the dozen or so college boys she's been keeping?" I felt like I'd swallowed a sharp bone. Lily had lied to me. The TV in the hot pot restaurant was playing a variety show. On the screen, I saw Ruby with Eric, the singer. Ruby was lying on a hammock, relaxing, while Eric bustled around, cooking. My friend glanced at the screen and sighed. Ruby got lucky, married a celebrity, heard his family's wealthy too. Back when you were sentenced, it was this guy who helped her out. But, well, you wasted 10 years of her life. Neither of you owes the other anymore. If you hadn't been so scheming, this could have been you and Ruby living a good life together now. I listened to his words, staring at the warm, happy scene on the screen, and clenched my fists tightly. Who would know how much I regret it? Every single day, I regret that one wrong choice, losing my career, and losing the woman I loved. Maybe I deserve all of this. Chapter 12. It took Eric and me a year to get together. Sam's actions had left me with deep psychological scars. Even though I knew Eric had feelings for me, I didn't dare to accept his advances too quickly. Perhaps Eric understood the lingering impact of my previous relationship, so he never pressured me for an answer. Aside from his work, he would coincidentally appear at various tourist spots where I happened to be. What a coincidence. Seeing his calm and composed expression, I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Coincidence? For the past 6 months, no matter where I went, Eric would show up within 3 days. Anyone else would think he'd planted a tracker on me, but, of course, he hadn't. Eric simply paid extra attention to my whereabouts. It was the Chishi festival, and the entire scenic area was filled with a romantic atmosphere. A little girl selling flowers looked up at us with wide, innocent eyes and said timidly, "Big brother, buy a flower for your girlfriend." Eric reached out and gently ruffled her hair. "She's not my girlfriend yet." Then, he picked a fresh, dewy rose from her basket, scanned the QR code to pay, and handed it to me. But it's important to give flowers during the pursuit phase. I couldn't help but smile. He always seemed to have a way with words. The little girl, her big eyes filled with anticipation, looked at me expectantly. I arched an eyebrow, then bent down to buy another rose. "Here, a gift in return." Eric lowered his gaze slightly, his tone soft. "Thank you. I like it very much." At 7 o'clock, fireworks were scheduled to light up the sky at the Lover's Bridge. An elderly man, rowing a boat nearby, chuckled warmly and said, "This Lover's Bridge is magical. If 2 people who are truly connected in their hearts stand on the bridge and make a wish, they'll be together forever." As the fireworks bloomed in the night sky, I quietly hooked my pinky around Eric's. I raised my voice and asked, "Do you want to make a wish?" Eric closed his eyes, and in the moment his eyes shut, I rose onto my tiptoes and kissed him. Chapter 13. My name is Eric. I'm a moderately well-known singer. The first time I saw Ruby, she was standing at an intersection, looking lost, like a stray kitten. Her tear-filled eyes shimmered, and it seemed like she was about to cry. I held the phone I had just wrestled back from a petty thief, even though I already knew it was hers. I couldn't help teasing her. Enter the password first. Ruby's face lit up with joy as she thanked me repeatedly. I, on the other hand, found myself staring at her tear-streaked face. My fingers twitched, and it took all my restraint to suppress the urge to wipe away her tears. I never expected we'd end up living next door to each other. Maybe this was fate. Ruby seemed burdened by something. She often sat alone, lost in thought. But whenever I saw her figure, inspiration would flow through me like a river. I wrote a song about our encounter. We got along well, but her stay was all too brief. The day I planned to take her to see the local water splashing festival, she suddenly looked hurried and preoccupied. We exchanged contact information, and as I watched her leave, I silently wished for the chance to see her again. When I heard Ruby's uncontrollable sobs over the phone, I shot to my feet. "Where are you?" My manager jumped in surprise. I apologized to the recording team and rescheduled the session for another day. My manager looked at me in confusion. "Did something happen to your family?" I pressed my lips together. "No." "Then why are you rushing like this?" "It's not my family, it's my muse." My manager's expression shifted as realization dawned. "You mean that girl who inspired you? The one your new song is based on?" I nodded. He gave me a knowing smirk. "Should I start drafting the announcement of your relationship now?" I suppressed the flutter in my chest. "There will be a time for that." There would be. "Eric, is it ready yet?" "I'm hungry," a soft, teasing voice called out behind me. I smiled and plated the food from the pot. "Coming. 2 people, 3 meals, 4 seasons." I had won the favor of my muse.